Hey, what's happening, people? It's Manic here with another video, and today we are talking about someone who needs no further introduction. We are talking about The Amazing Spider-Man. More specifically, who among the three live-action interpretations of Spider-Man we've gotten. Now, we have gotten more like within crappy Japanese TV shows, but we're just going with the main three: The Amazing Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, and of course the latest Spider-Man, who's Tom Holland, who's part of the MCU. So yeah, we're just gonna dive straight into. We're gonna look at all the different comparisons between Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and really just see who's better. But it's all opinionated, it's all subjective. So yeah, let's just get straight in. Kicking things off with our first Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire, which is the Spider-Man I was first introduced to, or at least the first live-action interpretation of Spider-Man I was introduced to, in the form of Spider-Man 3, and then I saw the other two when I was like super little. So starting off, this Spider-Man started in 2002. Of course, he's played by Tobey Maguire, and the movies were directed by Sam Raimi. It wasn't only like Tobey's acting that kind of boosted Spider-Man's popularity, but it was also Sam Raimi's directing in the form of Spider-Man 1 and 2. Now, Spider-Man 1 can be debated on being a pretty mediocre / average movie, but Spider-Man 2 is like a cinematic superhero comic book film masterpiece. So the thing about Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is his Peter Parker was honestly phenomenal. That's like the biggest reason everybody loves his Spider-Man. Peter Parker, like, the thing about him is he had this thing where he had to make choices. Like, that was the big thing about Spider-Man 2. He had choices to make, and he suffered greatly for them. Like for example, in Spider-Man 2, Peter Parker sits Aunt May down, and he tells her that the reason Uncle Ben is dead is because of him, is because Uncle Ben was trying to stop Peter, but Peter went off anyway. Peter let the robber go, and the robber ended up running and killing Uncle Ben. Now Aunt May is devastated by this and just has this look of disgust on her. But the thing is that he made this choice to come clean with what he did because he had this guilt over his head that he's the result for his uncle's death. And in result, the consequence is that his aunt got super mad at him, walked away, didn't take any sort of support from him. Another example would be when he loses his powers and he sees a burning building. Now, he can do one of two things. He can go and save whoever's in that building, or he could walk away and mind his own business. But since he's morally obligated to save the people in the building, he goes and does it even without powers. And again, he made a good choice, and a good consequence came from that. A good result came from that, in which he saved a little girl's life. Now, when we look at Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, he's not really like Spider-Man. He's not as talkative as your classic Peter Parker. He's not as positive. He doesn't have that positive attitude. He is very positive, but he doesn't really show it like Spider-Man would. Yes, he does. He fights the good fight. He fights for what's right. With great power comes great responsibility. All of that, but you don't get that quippy, happy-go-lucky Spider-Man vibe from Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, which is kind of Spider-Man's downfall and the reason Maguire's Spider-Man isn't the best Spider-Man. And also, this is a bit of a nitpick / a bit of a gripe with a lot of people, but he shoots webs it's organic webbing, so he shoots it out of his hand. Now, that's a little gross and weird if you think about it, and it's cooler when you think about how Peter Parker is the one who made the web shooters and incorporated that into his suit, which just shows he's a genius overall. And then speaking of the whole genius thing, this Spider-Man isn't exactly intuitive in the sense that when you look at someone like Tom Holland's Spider-Man, or maybe even Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, he uses the environment to his advantage a lot because, he's a smart kid, he thinks on his feet, and, that's kind of what Spider-Man does. He's a scientist, he has to think ahead and plan. Overall, Tobey Maguire was a solid Spider-Man. He was a solid Spider-Man, but his Peter Parker was above and beyond. You felt that he had to make those choices, and those consequences that resulted really affected him, but he always kept fighting no matter what because he knew he had to. Overall, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man can be considered lackluster, but his Peter Parker really brings out the energy and masterpiece of what Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is. So moving on to Andrew Garfield, which was another Spider-Man I grew up with when I was little. He kind of became my Spider-Man and replaced Tobey Maguire because I just thought he was super cool. So starting off with his Peter Parker, he was too cool. He was kind of he wasn't like a punk kid, but you know, he rode his skateboard. You know, he was a kind of a cool kid. Like, nobody really hated on him except, you know, Flash Thompson, but that's because, you know, Peter Parker was sticking up for people. You know, the biggest criticism with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is he had the wrong motivation for you know, stopping bad guys. So if you look back in the movie, Uncle Ben's dead. Now Peter is hellbent on finding Uncle Ben's killer. So what does he do? You know, after he knows he has the powers, he goes, dresses up in like a scheme in a red mask, and starts beating whoever he can. And in the process, he is stopping these criminals, but he's motivated by revenge, which isn't Peter Parker's thing. Peter Parker is motivated by doing the right thing and doing what's best because he knows that he has these spectacular abilities that not that many people have. You know? And even when he dons the Spider-Man suit, this is all, you know, in an attempt to find Uncle Ben's killer, which, that's not what Spider-Man's motivated by. Now, of course, you know, speaking of which, the Spider-Man aspect of Andrew Garfield is probably, you know, it's definitely better than Tobey Maguire's, and it's amazing because, you know, he's a cool Spider-Man. He's very positive. He's really lighthearted. You know, he's quippy. You know, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, when he's fighting Rhino, bam, you know, he freaking pants Rhino. Or when he's fighting the Lizard, you know, he's making comments about how it's super gross. And, you know, he's lighthearted. He's witty. And he's also intuitive. Like, the way he moves around when he swings, the way he uses the environment to his advantage, everything. That's Spider-Man ripped from the panels, which is, you know, gives Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man an advantage over Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Overall, what kind of kills Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is his motivation, or his starting motivation, but later on, you know, he learns that, you know, he has to help these people because he's a good guy, so, you know, he has to. So now we probably move on to a pretty, you know, controversial and torn Spider-Man, which is Tom Holland, you know, who appeared in 2016's Captain America Civil War for the first time, and it was also his first introduction into the Marvel Universe, you know, the anticipated introduction that everybody wanted because, you know, Spider-Man is like one of the best superheroes of all time. So it's a very, you know, debated argument for whether he's a good Spider-Man or he's a bad Spider-Man. Now, me personally, I think he's an alright Spider-Man. I have to give it to Tobey Maguire just because his Peter Parker outweighs like everything that Andrew and Tom have done. So when you look at Tom Holland, he's the perfect characterization for someone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Someone who is kind of looking all around them, and they see these superheroes and they're like, whoa, that's so cool, I want to be like Iron Man when I grow up, you know, because, you know, Peter Parker was saved by Iron Man in Iron Man 2. It's just like, whoa, that's super cool. So now he looks up to Iron Man. That's why a lot of people sort of dub him Iron Man Jr., you know, and his Peter Parker, he's nice and caring and, you know, lighthearted, you know, he quips too, you know, he's, you know, the embodiment of Peter Parker in the sense that he's a very nice guy, he's very wholesome, and, you know, he has the right heart. But again, his motivation is kind of strayed from the original path, like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Now, Tom's Spider-Man is more motivated by impressing Tony Stark and wanting to be an Avenger. He doesn't care about school. He wants to leave high school and be an Avenger. He, you know, quit band. He didn't go to the academic decathlon. This is all because he wanted to impress Tony Stark. In the comics, or in anything really, Spider-Man was more of a solo worker. He didn't want to be an Avenger, you know. At the end of the movie, at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, I will admit, when he says, you know, I want to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, that is good because that's what Spider-Man is meant to be. He's meant to look out for the little guy. Now, another downfall of Tom Holland's Spider-Man is he doesn't really take responsibility for any of his actions. So if we look at Spider-Man Homecoming, for example, we look at the bank heist, or the bank robbery scene. He goes in, he beats the bad guys pull out their Chitauri weapon, it wrecks like half of the corner street and the deli. No consequence. Yes, the deli is destroyed, but we don't hear anything else afterward. Like, we just assume that, you know, the person's fine, you know. The owner of it didn't die. Even the cat didn't die. And Spider-Man didn't receive any, you know, flack for it, because if you put this scenario into the Tobey Maguire universe, J. Jonah Jameson would be all over that. Or into the comic book universe, J. Jonah Jameson would be all over that, saying that Spider-Man is a menace because he destroyed the corner store. We also see that he's skipping all of his classes, you know, and leaving school early, and then he ends up getting put in detention. But then the principal, you know, lets him go by, and like even the PE coach lets him leave the classroom, lets him leave during detention. He doesn't really receive any repercussions for what he does. You know, everything stays the same. At the end of it, yes, he does receive the consequence of getting crushed, you know, by the rubble when he fights Vulture for like the second or third time, and you know that's where we get the whole pushing the rubble up scene, which is a great scene, by the way, and you know really sort of makes Tom Holland Spider-Man shine. Now, when we're looking at Spider-Man from the comics, he is a lighthearted kid who just wants to do the right thing because he feels morally obligated to do the right thing. Now, Peter Parker, in the MCU, he feels that, but he's also motivated by wanting to be an Avenger and wanting to impress Iron Man. Again, in this universe, it makes sense. It makes complete sense, but that's not exactly comic accurate. Now, end of the day, all these Spider-Men did good in their respective roles. All of them did a fantastic and amazing and spectacular job, but we all know who the best Spider-Man is. It's obviously the Spider-Man from Spider-Man PS4. This Spider-Man, he's everything I described within Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. You know, he has to make choices. He receives horrible consequences for him. In the beginning of the game, it's literally he has to either pay his bills or go stop Kingpin, and he goes and stops Kingpin. He has to make that choice, and he gets a consequence. There's a mission where you have to find all your stuff and like dig through garbage to find it. This Spider-Man is caring, you know, he's wholesome. There's a side mission where you have to collect pigeons for a homeless guy. This Spider-Man, he cares about people. He cares about the greater good. He has to make choices that have consequences, good or bad. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this video. In the comments below, tell me, who do you think is the best Spider-Man between Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland? It's all opinionated, so there's no really right answer. They're all great in their respective roles. And also make sure to like the video if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want more of my content. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.
So alone ever since I left the tribe. That's just how it goes, guess I like the lonely vibe. But they'll never know, cause I'm always on my grind. And I